The Queen's Jewish Link presents the Jewish Living Podcast, the show that examines the many facets of Orthodox Jewish life. Here's your host, Izzo Zwirin.
Welcome to the Season 2 premiere of the Jewish Living Podcast. Many kids grow up with the hopes that one day they could become a professional athlete. I remember the day my dreams officially died when I was 19 years old and I learned of a Major League Baseball player who was younger than I was. Not that I had any actual aspirations of playing professionally or any realistic hopes, but at that moment, I knew the dream was over before it had even had a chance to get off the ground. Frum Jews have an even more difficult time of going about it. Not only do you have to be one of the elite athletes worthy of playing a sport professionally, but you would have to be so good that teams would want you, even if it means that there's at least one day out of the week that you would not be available. But this week on the Jewish Living Podcast, we talk to someone who is trying to be the first to be just that valuable.
My name is Elie Kligman, and I play baseball.
Joining Elie is his father, who comes with his own expertise.
I am Marc Kligman, and I am Ellie's father. I'm a lawyer, Major League Baseball player agent, and a coach.
That's right, we have a father-son duo, one a player and the other one a Major League agent. We will discuss how Elie works baseball into his Orthodox lifestyle and just what are the chances Elie has of making it at the professional level. All right, Marc, Elie, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm going to direct most of my questions to Elie. This is really all about Elie. So first of all, Elie, if you can give me a little bit of background about you. How long have you been playing organized baseball? Another good question, how old are you now? If you can give us a little bit of a background on yourself.
So I'm 18 right now. I started playing baseball really when I could throw a baseball or pick one up. But organized, I was probably about 6 years old. And ever since then, I just kind of fell in love with the game, watching it on TV, playing it in, the house and the field, wherever I was. And I just kind of stuck with it and loved the game and kept on going.
All right. So at 18 years old, you're actually our youngest guest. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. And that makes you a senior in high school at this point?
Yeah.
All right. Great. So let's go with this one. Lots of kids grow up having this tremendous dream to being a professional athlete. When did you realize you had what it took to at least get to the next level? Right now you're in high school and we're looking to go to college. When did you realize you had that potential to move on to that level?
I probably always thought that I could get to that level when I was younger. Just growing up, that was the dream, and I was kind of what I told myself, this is what I'm going to do. But when I got to high school and I started facing older kids and the game, the fields were bigger, the kids were stronger, I kind of realized that I could play at the next level, and I wasn't having any problems playing with older, bigger, stronger kids.
So I'm assuming that you know of other people your age or younger or a little older that might have had the talent, but didn't put in the effort in order to get to the next level. What type of things do you see that you've had to sacrifice, that you've had to put in extra work in to get you to that point?
It's really just the daily grind. You have to keep everything sharp. You have to keep working at everything at all times, because if you don't work on something, somebody's going to catch you. And I'd rather be the kid that's catching other kids. So just that daily grind of working hard every day on every part of the game is just kind of how I kept it up.
All right. So you're invited onto this show for basically two reasons. Number one, you are a highly touted out of high school player. And number two, you are an Orthodox Jew. So the obvious question are some of the contradictions. Where do you have issues when it comes to, let's start with the obvious one, Shabbos. Games probably are scheduled on the weekends and probably on Yom Tovim. So where does that leave you? Have you had issues with the scheduling before? And what does that do for your particular abilities to showcase what you can do?
So there's always been games on Shabbos, especially when we play tournaments on the weekends and everything. But tournaments and coaches have all been really good about helping us schedule games. Instead of having 2 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday, there would be 1 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. So I was always able to kind of maximize the amount of time I could play. And there's obviously been games I've missed, playing in front of scouts, playing in front of schools. But at the end of the day, Shabbos is Shabbos. And if I'm going to showcase who I am, that's going to have to be on the 6 other days.
So There's one thing to reschedule a game. There's one thing to move things around, and we'll get to exactly how that plays into what you do on the field. And it's really great that you are dealing with a lot of scheduling people that are willing to manipulate the schedule in order to suit your needs. What do the scouts say? So scouts are coming in from colleges. I'm assuming you've played in front of some major league scouts. What do scouts say when they find out that you have these unique needs, and how they could help you move to the next level?
So, I mean, some scouts don't even know that I don't play on Shabbos. That's just because they haven't seen me play a lot. But most of the scouts that I've met have always thought it was really cool, and they respected that God comes first, and they just thought that like a lot of the, like, in terms of locker room type of stuff, having someone that's very grounded and kind of a faithful person is a kind of a good person to have on the team. Has convictions and stuff like that. But I mean, everybody's been really cool about it. They've respected it, and they've thought it's really awesome, honestly.
That's great. Mark, I'm going to turn to you for a second. I'm assuming that as the dad and as somebody who has a lot of connections in Major League Baseball, you haven't really just let this go without doing your own little research. So what have you heard coming down the pipeline on your side from Major League people, if you've discussed this with them, as to what the odds are of Ellie potentially being able to play further down the road?
Well, it all starts with being pretty good.
Right.
So if you're going to help somebody win baseball games, then you've got value. So as Ellie has matured and become more physical and refined his game and been able to test himself out against better competition, and especially playing with and against players in the country in his class who are going to be first rounders. And he's been able to hang with them. That's really been a good proving ground for not just us, as a father and as Ellie as a player, but also for the scouts who watch him. So I think it all starts with, are you good enough? And I think that Ellie is going to be good enough at some point to hopefully get a professional opportunity. It's pretty tough to come out of high school. You got to be sort of wow, because the major league teams have to buy you out of 3, maybe 4 years of college, and that's an expensive buyout. Once you start to become a pro, you're punching a ticket, you're punching a time clock, and it becomes a job. When you're in college, it's a little less so. So college is a great opportunity because not only for the educational purpose of it, but just to be able to grow a little more into who you are as a player. But I think that there's been really good feedback on Ellie. I think he's come on a little more recently, and one of the bigger things was that he's traditionally been a pitcher and an infielder, but we've always thought that catching might be his number one position, and that kind of got unveiled about a week ago in front of a bunch of scouts, and there was really good positive reviews for that, and also catching might turn out to be one of the better potential possibilities at a pro level to keep in Shabbos.
So we will definitely get into the positions and how that relates into how things work out with Shabbos and other aspects of your collegiate and maybe professional career. We'll see. But the other thing that is an obvious question is kashrus, is eating kosher. Now, I'm assuming, again, I'm not a professional baseball player. I never went through this whole the whole rigmarole of scouts and tournaments and travel teams, but I'm assuming you're going to places that don't have large Orthodox communities with large access to kosher food. So has that been a challenge for you? And if so, Ellie, what have you done in order to mitigate against the challenges?
It's definitely been a challenge at some places, but it usually just takes planning ahead, just bringing frozen burgers, or just kind of going to Walmart, getting a salad, and just stuff like that. But pretty much wherever you go, there's going to be food. We cook a lot in the George Foreman, so that's pretty helpful, especially when you're a place when there's no kosher food. But mostly just planning ahead and finding little things at the market and stuff like that. But we never really had a problem with that.
That's great to hear. the other questions that people, because I mentioned that this interview was happening to a couple of friends of mine, especially friends of mine that we follow baseball very closely. People ask about like your davening and learning schedules, and if that's a thing that gets messed over, and even your school schedule, not just Jewish or Limudei Kodesh aspect, but like just regular schooling at this point in your life.
Yeah, so I do online school.
Okay.
So that makes everything a lot more flexible. I can do my classes more to my schedule, which is awesome. In terms of learning and everything, we're pretty good about doing our Chumash and Tanya every night. Sometimes it gets pushed back pretty late at night on a long baseball day, but we're pretty good about getting everything done.
Nice. Before we move on to the actual baseball aspect, and by the way, I know people can't see this, but I'm looking at Ellie's, I think this is your bedroom that I'm looking through.
Yeah.
And I see a picture of Ellie with a black hat and a baseball bat being held. I think that's one of my favorite pictures I've ever seen in my life.
That's the bar mitzvah sign-in board.
That's the bar mitzvah sign-in board. That's a phenomenal picture. I love it. That's terrific. That's going to go down in the annals. Before we move on to the actual baseball stuff, are there any other challenges that you might have faced, or and I know there has to be some interesting stories that you think might be some relevancy to this show. So if there's any challenges or any other stories you want to share, and Mark, feel free to jump in if you have one also.
Well, I'd say one of the more common stories is being in a hotel room. We've been in St. George, Utah, Cartersville, Georgia, Kentucky, like all these random places, and we've stayed in hotels for just, I think at least, a day usually, but you're just in the hotel, there's nothing to do, there's a game the next day, game before that, and you're just stuck in the hotel doing Shabbos.
Yep. I actually had that once. I went to Nashville for a conference, and I had that same thing where I was just like in the room, and sometimes you can't even get out of the room because there are only card keys, so you're like, what do you do? You have to find somebody to be able to open up for you. But yeah, that's exactly the situation a lot of people felt in. Mark, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we've gotten really good about explaining Shabbos to hotel attendants and telling them that this is our situation and we cannot ask you to do something. But if we happen to show up down at the front desk and say, boy, it'd be great to get in my room, that might be a hint to let us in. We've had to be careful about the electronic doors, and you have to know whether we can go in the stairwells and stuff. But we've also had teammates that have come by and joined us for Shabbos dinner, and they've sort of the Shabbos goy, so to speak. The Shabbos helper, right? I say that only in the nicest way, the word goy. But some of our teammates and some of the non-Jewish teammates, they wish Ellie a Shabbat Shalom or a good Shabbos when he hustles out of there on a Friday afternoon, and all coaches are always coming up to us saying, "Okay, so what time can you guys stay till?" And we're always coordinating them to try to figure it out. There was a good story last year too that came out of our spring. So our high school coach Mike Hubel was really good about not scheduling games on Shabbos. But Ellie, why don't you tell the story about the sort of snafu that happened where they scheduled one of the games on the last days of Passover, and kind of how that all unfolded with how we took care of it. Ellie can tell you.
Yeah, so there's a game scheduled on the last day of Pesach, obviously, and our coach, the principal, all my teammates, one of the dads of our teammates, really pushed this board and the schedulers to reschedule the game on a game that wasn't on Pesach. And eventually, after everyone worked pretty hard on it, the game got changed. Obviously, we didn't get to play the game because of COVID, but it was still awesome to see all my teammates and everybody rallying around me to get a game in. And we've had one of my favorite stories actually. When I was 8 years old, we were in a North City Pony League All Stars, and it was an elimination game on a Shabbos. So obviously I wasn't there, and so we were sitting at home just kind of waiting all day, waiting to see what the result was. And sometime in the afternoon, we heard a knock on the door, and it was actually one of our teammates. And we had pretty much the whole team showed up to our house that day. They told us they lost and everything, but that sucked. But the whole team was there. We hung out all afternoon, and it was awesome.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Last question before we move on: where's the most random Chabad house you've discovered that exists?
Ooh.
Like random how? You can sort of define random.
A place that you would not expect a Chabad to be, and they're somehow there.
There's been a couple places in North Carolina, Cary, North Carolina.
All of these towns that none of us have ever heard of.
Cary's probably one of the more ones you probably wouldn't have thought would have had a Chabad.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that place that exists.
We spent a lot of time in Phoenix because Phoenix has the spring training complexes, and on the west side of Phoenix, you've got the Rangers and Royals in Surprise. You've got the Padres and the Mariners in Peoria. You've got the Dodgers and the White Sox sharing a facility in Camelback and Glendale. And then further south, a little bit west, in Goodyear, you have the Indians and the Reds. So a lot of the major tournaments happen in Phoenix because they've got the field capacity. So we spend a lot of time in Phoenix, and we've really gotten to know that community. And there's a few satellite Chabad houses that have been really cool. Like in Peoria, Arizona, we really didn't even know that existed, and it was able to facilitate one of our tournaments where we had a Saturday night game, and probably saved us 20 minutes in transportation, and we were able to get there on time. And so everyone has been really helpful, and they also come out and watch the games, and it's been really uplifting.
All right, so let's move on to the actual baseball side of this. So I saw your kind of a little scouting report. Unfortunately, some of the sites require me to pay for a little bit of a more advanced scouting, so I only got a little bit of a taste. But you're listed as a pitcher shortstop, but as your father mentioned earlier, that catcher seems to be the way to go. So if you want to explain how you started being pitcher shortstop, but now moving to catcher.
Yeah, so when I was younger in middle school, pretty much up until high school, I had played every position. A lot of catcher, a lot of pitcher, but I had played infield, outfield, kind of whatever. And then when I got to high school, we had senior catchers, so that's kind of where I wasn't needed. So most of my freshman year, I actually played first base in the outfield and pitcher.
Okay.
So, and then my sophomore year, I played mostly third, second, and short. And then junior year has been more shortstop and pitcher. So I definitely moved around a lot. And then this year, the catching was kind of something we wanted to see where it was in front of the scouts. And that was something that could help me out the next level for sure.
So you just on a whim decided, or had you been like hiding this stuff, waiting to break it out at some point?
So we knew that it was probably going to be something I was going to use, but I just hadn't caught in years. But I caught bullpens and stuff, and I'd worked on it a little bit, but I guess to some people it was a little bit of a surprise, but we were kind of waiting to bring it out.
Well, so I guess having a pitcher arm, a shortstop arm, really helps you out make that throw to second base. I'm assuming. Yeah, that's probably one of the main things that they're looking for. I'm assuming everybody at that level can catch a ball. I mean, there is a certain skill in standing behind a plate and catching a 97-mile-an-hour fastball if that's what you're catching at this level. But the bigger skill that can't really be taught is the arm speed, throwing down to second base, throwing behind the runner at first base. I don't know if they test you out on that stuff yet, but I'm just curious about how scouts reacted to you being able to make that throw.
I mean, one of the first things that I was told after I threw to second base in a workout was that my arm strength is really good. They gave me a grade 5 on my arm, which basically means major league average.
That's awesome.
Which was cool. Which is awesome because you can't really teach arm strength.
Right.
You can teach a lot of things, but arm strength isn't really one of them.
How's it on your knees?
My knees are awesome.
These are awesome. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we touched on it a little bit earlier. Now, when I first found out, and I just read basically the Chabad article, Chabad.org article about you, and I know since then you've had other publications put things out about you, but my first thought was, oh, he's a pitcher. That seems to be like the best option for you to be a professional athlete in a team sport, because pitchers don't play every day, once every 5 days. And then you could potentially work it out with a team, whether it's in college, whether it's in the pros, that you can take a rest on Shabbos and Friday night, Saturday. A lot of teams have Saturday night games, so you could potentially make those starter, reliever, whatever. But as I'm looking more into it, maybe catcher is the best way to do it. And if you could explain which one would be a better position for you to be able to be Shomer Shabbos on the next levels, and why that is.
I would probably say catcher.
Okay.
The problem with pitcher is, as a reliever, you don't know what night you're going to throw.
Right.
So they could need you on Saturday, and then that would obviously have a problem. And as a starter, every 5 days you're pitching. So if your day lines up on Shabbos and I can't throw, that just messes up everybody's rotation. So catcher would be the easiest, mostly because catchers only catch 4 or 5 days a week anyway. So missing 2 or 3 games in the week is normal.
Right. And it's not a roster exemption. It's like you're like sitting there. It's
Yeah.
not, in hockey, they have healthy scratches. It's not like they have that in baseball.
Yeah. A lot of teams carry 3 catchers anyway.
Mhm.
So even if someone were to get injured, they would have another catcher.
All right. But so that's a major league schedule.
Yeah.
Major leagues, they play 6-7 times a week, more if there's double headers. College schedules, which is where you're headed next, hopefully, they aren't like that. The layman, the people who follow college sports, like not so in depth, especially baseball. Like a lot of people might follow college football, college basketball, but college baseball isn't in the national eye as much as those other 2 sports. So can you explain the scheduling for college baseball and how that would relate to catching as well?
Yeah. So college, mostly the games are Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and a weekday game usually on like a Tuesday.
Okay.
Sometimes they have tournaments, so there'll be multiple games in the weekend, but that's generally the schedule. So actually in college, it would probably be easier to pitch because you can just pitch on Sunday or the week. But catching, as a starting catcher in college, there would probably have to be a game or 2 moved. So instead of the game being on 7 o'clock on a Friday night, it could be like at 3 o'clock. So just moving that game a couple hours could have me be able to play the whole game.
Right.
Or moving the game up on Saturday from a 5 o'clock game to a 7 o'clock game, and then I could play the whole game.
Okay, and obviously the weekday game isn't a big deal. And I know that once they get into like the postseason, there's more like double headers and single games in a day. Now, obviously for a catcher, no catchers aren't catching usually both games of a double header. So that would be a different way of you accessing it. You could catch a second game, which is at night. But would that also, as a catcher, wouldn't that put you at a disadvantage for the game 3 that might take place on Sunday? If you're catching the second game of a doubleheader that ends at, let's say, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then the next day you have a 1 o'clock game, is that something that you're going to be able to do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, catching one game and then going to sleep the next night, that's fine. You're well rested for the next game, and you're able to do what you got to do.
You sound like an 18-year-old. All right. So in terms of college, I don't know if you're able to do this, and maybe Mark, you could jump in on this. If we're able to discuss which colleges we're looking at, and anything, any other news that you might be able to share about that.
Right. So it's a good question to come off the last one. I think at this stage, we'll just say that the college coaches that we're talking to are ones that we have particular insight into who they are as people. A lot of college coaches can recruit you and they can be on their best behavior. One of the advantages we have about me being in the game is that I have relationships with certain people, and we sort of get to know and vet them and really see who they are. So the college coaches that we're talking to, we pretty much have it narrowed down to 3 schools. We don't want to name them right now just because it's probably better just to wait until things happen. But we've got 3 schools that we're dialed into, and all the coaches are completely aware of all of the observation, the observances, the devotion, and some aspects, the restrictions, etc. And so they're willing to do whatever they can to try to accommodate. And if you carry yourself the right way and you give everything you possibly can in exchange, so to speak, for what potential accommodations can be made, then usually it goes over very well and it's very appreciated.
So one question that everybody's been asking is about your legal representation. So the first question is, how does it work with your father being a professional agent? Is he allowed to be an agent? Because there's a lot of NCAA rules about agency. And then second of all, when the time comes to find an actual agent, are you going to look around for options, or are you pretty much tied into one guy?
No, he's an agent. He has Major League Baseball players and everything. So I'm going to roll with him.
Okay. So what about having agent representation while you're in college? That is an issue in the NCAA. As
yeah,
anybody...
I mean, it's technically not allowed, but he's my dad, so I can talk to him and stuff.
Okay, it's nice to be able to talk.
And your listeners will love that I had the surreal moment when Ellie had a chance to sort of select me as his advisor, because now they have this MLB draft prospect link, which they send out to players that the major league teams want to invite to gather information on. So you create an account, you log in, the major league teams would ask you certain questions. There's a basic questionnaire, there's a medical questionnaire, and then each of the teams can submit supplemental questionnaires. So there's a spot there to select an advisor. So we were sitting on the couch together, and he pulls the drop-down menu of all the certified Major League Baseball player agents. And so there I am. He selects me, and I sort of took a picture, a little bit of a surreal moment.
So as an agent, though, obviously you're always going to promote your client, right? So you're always going to be on a bias level where people are where potential employers in the future are going to like take what you say with a certain grain of salt, but okay, he's trying to promote this guy. Is there a difference with that when it's your son?
Great question, actually. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people in the industry, whether they're front office guys or scouts or fellow agents. And I've coached since I was 14, but I've coached high-level travel ball. I coached Ellie and Ari, his younger son, on travel ball. And I'm a current coach as an assistant at Cimarron Memorial, where the boys play. So we would always start off our parent meetings by saying, look, let's all agree on one thing. We all believe that our kids are better than they really are. Okay? And once we are all in agreement that we all think that as parents, then we can sort of go forward. But what's very interesting in this conversation I've had with other people in the industry is that because we're in the business, we have to call it pretty straight about our own kids, because if we don't, we really lose credibility, right? So I'm fairly confident that if you were to ask myself to give a scouting report on Ellie, if you were to ask a major league scout to give a scouting report on his own kid, if you're going to ask the general manager of whatever MLB team to give a scouting report on his kid, they would be fairly straight, just like the report would reflect someone who has no relationship. Because we've got to play it straight, because we lose credibility if we start touting our kids as what they really aren't.
Yeah, and he's actually, I mean, I have obviously a lot of experience with that, because he's been really honest with me about who I am as a baseball player and how I relate to the next level and a lot of players in front of me and everything, which has been good because it helps me know who I am and what I need to work on.
That's awesome. You mentioned earlier that you have been able to reach out to Tamir Goodman. Has there been anybody else that has been in a similar situation that you've been reaching out to? I'll give you a couple of names that I was just throwing around. I don't know if you're familiar with BD Deutsch, who's trying to qualify for the Olympics in Israel, and Esty Ackerman, who was not able to make her tryouts for the Olympics in 2013. Or if there's anybody else that you've been in contact with in the past or potentially going to be in contact with in the future that might help you out with this stuff.
There's one kid actually in a similar situation to me, Jacob Steinmetz.
Oh.
I was introduced to him a couple weeks ago when the article came out. And he's going to Fordham, so he's kind of in a similar situation as me, except he's a pitcher. But it's been cool to have another person out there who's doing something that is kind of like what I'm doing.
Oh, that's nice, especially going through it at the same time. And Mark, you mentioned you have another son, Ari. Any plans for him in the future?
Yeah, I got big plans for Ari. Yeah, I mean, it's been great for Ari because he's been really pushed by his older brother. And what's fantastic is every father's dream, really, on many levels. But one level is the boys, they get along really well. They're like best friends, and they work out together. And Ellie helps Ari out. Ari helps Ellie out. It's a lot of real good give and take. The hardest problem we're going to have is I'm going to have to pull away from the computer and head out to the field with Ari once Ellie leaves. So I'm going to have to be better at time management. But, you know, he's a really good baseball player in his own right. He picked up some awards 9th grade year. He was in our rotation 10th grade year just before the shutdown. He picked up his first varsity win, and he had his first career hit when he was a 9th grader and coming up and doing a little cameo on varsity. So he's a pretty good picture in our rotation, and he's a little taller than Ellie, and he really loves to sort of rub that in.
Yeah, Ellie seemed to be very happy about you mentioning that also. And I guess you're hiding that catching possibility for him too for now.
Ari's never particularly loved very hard things coming at him and bouncing. So he sort of
I don't particularly love it either, but
he sort of had to fight some of his instincts to get to the infield because the high school team needed Ari in the infield. I think he might be more of a natural outfielder than a pitcher, but no, he's really developing. He's a very young junior, so he doesn't have necessarily time on his side. He won't turn 18 until late September of his freshman year of college. So he's super young. We might let him catch up later for red shirt in college is needed or something, but he's working real hard to try to get where his older brother is.
All right. So in a couple of years, maybe we'll have him on the show too. Hopefully the show will last that long. All right. Here's the big question. And literally anybody who I spoke to that I told I was going to have you guys on the show asked me this question. And that is the realistic possibilities of Ellie making the majors while being able to remain from and Shomer Shabbos. And Ellie, Mark, either one of you guys could jump in on that.
My chances of being from and making it to the major leagues are my chances of making it to the major leagues.
That is a phenomenal answer. We love that. All right. So what are those? Not everybody makes it to the major leagues. Like forget being from and not that. What are the realistic odds? And maybe Mark, this is more of a you question. Realistic odds of us seeing Ellie in a major league uniform at some point.
Right. So I'll put on my agent cap here, and Ellie referenced me giving him sort of a dose of reality, and I always got to play it straight. Look, you really just want to get a pro opportunity. Once you get a pro opportunity and you're playing professional baseball, then if you perform and you do what you need to do, you will get promoted. Obviously, guys who have a lot of money in them are going to get more opportunity to fail before they get bounced, and guys who don't have a lot of money in them will get sometimes less of an opportunity. But if you're a super duper kid and the organization loves you, then you can hang around a little while. I've got plenty of guys. One of my more famous clients that maybe a lot of your readers have loved to hate, if they're Mets fans, is Carlos Ruiz. Carlos is part of the family. In fact, it was his birthday 2 days ago. He's in Panama. Carlos was at the bar mitzvahs. He's been to more kosher restaurants than most Jewish people. And he was an $8,000 sign as a second baseman out of Panama. One of my clients who was started one of the games in the ALCS last year for the Astros, Dustin Garneau, was a late round senior sign at Cal State Fullerton, and he's made a great career of it. So I think having clients with those examples is great for Ellie because you don't have to make $1 million out of the draft to get an opportunity to be a big leaguer. So I will say, with that preface to the answer to your question, that our attitude has always been, and Ellie can chime in here, that why not? And anything is possible. That if we just keep grinding and we just keep being good and living life the right way, that why can't it be done? Right? In our day and age of more social awareness, more racial awareness, trying to find more equality amongst everyone, where we have a world where the media is nothing can get past the media, right? We're all trying to do good. There should be goodness. So why not? Why can't an owner step up? Why can't a general manager step up and say, you know what? We're going to do this. Why not? I mean, we already have college coaches that are going to try to change some games if Ellie is going to be a starter for them and help them win games. So why can't we find an owner who's going to do the same thing and a general manager? And if it doesn't inconvenience everybody else too much, well, then why not? It's a good thing.
If you can help a team win, they'll want you on the team.
Right. And you know what? There's precedent for changing games. If you do your research, and I can say where you're in your memory banks, you can remember that the Red Sox and the Yankees changed games because they fell on Erev Yom Kippur. They moved them up. Right? The New York Giants football team also did the same thing.
That's right. That was
right. So
2013.
There is precedent for accommodations. Television is definitely king, but like we talked about earlier, it's very, very possible that if catching is the most projectable thing for Ellie, that if the team decides, look, we're going to do this, and it's a great story, and he's going to help us win, and we're just going to make sure we carry 3 catchers. And what's interesting too is that when he was younger, 11, 12, 13, 14, when he wasn't there, he was one of the best players on the team. So when he wasn't there for a Saturday game, which was unavoidable, it was real tough. And so we always said, gosh, we just would rather just play on a stud team so that he's not that important, right? So the team can still win on Saturday without it. right? And most parents don't want that. Most parents want their kids to be the best and want everybody to miss him and laud and praise him. And sure, there's part of that. But then in high school, when we started to play with a team full of Ellies, right? While on some level he certainly enhanced the offering that the team had, they were certainly able to win without him. And that made us feel better because we were concerned about the overall well-being of the team. We wanted them to win.
That's phenomenal. By the way, I'm born and bred New Yorker, but I ended up being a Marlins fan, so I'm still not the biggest fan of Carlos Ruiz either. Ellie, Mark, either one of you can answer this. Anything else that you want to share with the audience before we let you go?
Probably my parting comment would be that I just feel that I think Ellie and I both feel and my family feel very humbled that the article for Chabad was able to go out. It's been picked up in Israel and J-Post today and Arutz. And I've been reading the comments from people who are Jewish and not Jewish, and it's very humbling and very heartwarming to see that we've been able to inspire some folks. And Ellie's got a long way to go. I mean, he knows he's got a lot of work to put in, and this is sort of just the beginning. He's just at the latter part of high school where people start to look and see if he's able to move on to the next level. But you got to keep grinding, you got to keep working hard. But I think we're just very humbled that it's been so welcome, and even just very humbled that you want to have us on for your listeners. So I think we certainly want to say thank you very much for having us, and I think Ellie also wanted to express his thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really awesome to get like the DMs from the kids who play baseball and don't play on Shabbos telling me how inspired they are about my story and how much they want to keep going with what they're doing. And that just kind of, fuels more for me too.
It's great because I there's, like I mentioned before, there's people in other sports as well. It's not just baseball. There's a couple of people who live in my neighborhood, one who plays hockey on the Junior Islanders team. I mentioned the table tennis player, the lady in Israel who is running a marathon trying to get into the Olympics. All these sports, and all we're asking kind of is just can one of us do it? And Ellie, if that's you, I just want you to know, I want you to remember where your first live interview was, so that
I will
come back on. We could have you as a recurring guest potentially.
For sure.
All right. Ellie, Mark, thank you guys so much for coming on, and have a great day and good luck.
Thanks for having me.
My thanks to Ellie and Marc Kligman for joining us this week. I mentioned at the start that Ellie's trying to fit baseball into his frum lifestyle, and that is exactly the way to phrase it. In talking with both Ellie and Mark, I got the sense that while baseball is hopefully Ellie's future, it comes second to his devotion to his religion. Ellie's not making Judaism fit with baseball, he's making baseball fit with Judaism. It's obviously not easy, and we here at the Jewish Living Podcast of course wish him well, and we will be following his progress very closely. For Ellie, Mark, and all of you listening, Kol Tov.
The Jewish Living Podcast is produced by Sreli Paikus. Our theme song is The Band by A.B. Rottenberg. Follow us on Facebook at The Jewish Living Podcast and on Twitter and Instagram at Jewish_living. You can also email the show at jewishlivingpodcast@gmail.com. The Jewish Living Podcast is recorded in conjunction with the Queens Jewish Link.